Development. Pro Skater 4's development continued the tradition of being a yearly release in the Tony Hawk series. The main goal was to improve the physics, animations, and have just a much more organized system. This is shown in the reworked main menu that offers more options and statistics. Players can now do things like enable cheats, see their game progress, enable preset ramps, and change levels without the need of being in the main menu. Players are given the ability to be aware of what progress they need to do in the game, so now it gives people the incentive to play the levels more. One interesting thing I discovered was that Neversoft would host a rap party called the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4 Gala that featured Tenacious D as a performer. It was a golden age for Neversoft, and they were embracing it. Neversoft hired members of the online community to personally influence the game, and that's where Andy THPS comes in, a micro-celebrity of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater fanbase. Andy started playing the series back during the release of the demo for Pro Skater 1. When Pro Skater 3 came out, Andy was hooked and spent most of his time mastering the game's online mode. He was eventually contacted by Jared Prindle, Tony Hawk's personal assistant, to send him a combo video. Andy's combo videos were so good, he even got compensated for his video to air on the Jumbotron during Tony Hawk's Boom Boom Huck Jam tour.
Tony Hawk's Boom Boom Huck Jam is coming to McDonald's. You can get one of 8 insanely extreme high-flying toys at every Happy Meal.
Oh, sick. Andy's talent even led him to be hired at Neversoft for quality assurance. A short-term stay turned into a long-term, as Andy would be assigned the goal to find potential glitches, crashes, and exploits. He would be part of the development team throughout the lifespan of the entire Tony Hawk series, and even contributed to the Guitar Hero series. The humorous dialogue was a key feature in the production of the game, adding more dialogue than ever, which can vary by the character you select.
Wanker! Wanker!
Gameplay. Pro Skater 4 has excellent gameplay. The biggest change in Pro Skater 4 is the complete elimination of the 2-minute time limit. The player now has the free will to accept objectives and collect cash at their own leisure. Cash could be spent on new boards, new skaters, bonus videos, and 2 additional levels, Carnival and Chicago, from Matt Hoffman's Pro BMX. Stat points would be rewarded as you complete challenges. Challenges in Pro Skater 4 vary beyond just collecting scores and going from point A to point B. The combo objective, for example, makes its debut here, where players have to collect letters in a single combo. Skitching was also added, which involved holding onto the back of a vehicle for speed. There was also various mini-games like tennis and racing being added as well.
You foolish skater person, I laugh at you, ha 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 ha!
Another newly added mechanic was the spine transfer, which helped the player transition from one side of the quarter pipe to the other. Grind and lip extensions were also added that gave the player the ability to do various tricks during these actions to add to their overall combo. Challenges are presented with an element of story to them, giving the objective much more of a purpose.
Alright, this idea is really stupid, but I don't care. I set up this haggard ramp and inflated a target out in the water. See how many points you could rack up.
Pro Skater 4 was the only one in the series that didn't require players to buy tricks. Instead, the player is given the ability to allocate whatever moveset to use from the beginning.
Bingo offensive everywhere!
Difficulty contrasted with this change, however. Goals in Pro Skater 4 were much more difficult 100%, with racing objectives having stiff movement controls, tight grind objectives with very little margin of error time, and move requirements that are just straight up confusing. Most notably being the Misty Flip over the Big Hut Gap on the map Kona, considered to be one of the hardest objectives to achieve in the game. I somehow did it, I don't know how I was able to, I just kind of pushed forward and then did the move, I got lucky. Difficulty in Pro Skater 4 scales by the level in which you are playing, snowballing and challenge as you progress. There's a lot of self-masochism that is needed to 100% Pro Skater 4. The character selection. Character selection features a lot of the pros from Pro Skater 3 making their return. Bob Burnquist made his return in this edition, also with the new addition being Mike Vowley being new to the roster.
What, you think you can hang with me?
One downside of Pro Skater 4 was its roster totaling out to only 18 playable skaters, in comparison to Pro Skater 3 having 21. Pro Skater 4 only had 3 hidden skaters: the Iron Maiden mascot Eddie, Django Fett, and Daisy. Django Fett is an interesting addition due to one of his specials, the Django Jump Jet, which when used frequently, players can exploit this to boost in the air indefinitely, as you see here. I do want to mention that like Pro Skater 3, Pro Skater 4 has a bunch of secret skaters that are created when you name your skater a very specific name.
I just punched myself in the face for you and you're not gonna pick me?
Bam's feature in Pro Skater 4 displayed himself in a much more casual street style, with a button up top button halfway and a pair of denim jeans with heartograms on it. Bam's featured special tricks included one-wheel fireworks show, the Jackass, Flip Kick Dad, and the Russian Boneless. Every pro skater has done voiceovers for certain objectives in the game. Bam is no exception in levels like Zoo.
Hope you're not afraid of heights, you little wuss. See if you can grind across all 4 of them zoo banners.
A new addition in Pro Skater 4 is the feature of Pro Challenges. Upon reaching 90 pro points in the game, the player is given access to that pro's pro challenge. A lot of these challenges will reflect a part of that skater's career or their personality. For example, Bam's feature was on the map Alcatraz, where the player has to go downhill in a shopping cart reminiscent of shopping cart slams from the CKY series. Bam's secret tape features his notorious Ferrari Medina, with scenes from Haggard and the song Shimmy by System of a Down playing in the background.
My dad was just like, isn't it weird that like you had 15 of his skateboards when you were younger, now he's like flying here and chilling with us? It's just been such a gradual thing, you know, like all the cool stuff that's happened, I haven't really sat down and thought about how, you know, sick it is.
Level design. The levels in Pro Skater 4 were much bigger in size than in the previous games. Levels were designed for having lines everywhere that made combos much easier and grind-based. Levels like College were admired for its combination of grindable objects, skatable buildings, and interactable vehicles with a fair share of glitches. Neversoft's humor was much more silly and absurd than in further titles.
Move along. Nothing to see here.
What's with the monkey? Adding elements like hippos, sea lions, dog chases, and even more insane signature moves that added an element of cartooniness. Levels in Pro Skater 4 offer their fair share of secret areas and Easter eggs, one of the most notable being the goat Easter egg located behind a stand on Carnival. This Easter egg would exist in future releases in the series. Pro Skater 4 offered a diverse range of levels that blend traditional and whimsical designs. Urban-inspired stages like San Francisco and London showcased intricate cityscapes, complete with towering buildings, moving cars, and rooftops to skate across. On the other hand, levels like Oil Rig and Alcatraz are designed with a more vertical, multi-layered structure, featuring ramps, elevators, and shortcuts that let you skate your way up and explore different elevations. Meanwhile, more playful locations such as Carnival and Zoo embrace that cartoony vibe that Neversoft was embracing, allowing players to skate through unconventional obstacles like roller coasters and animal habitats. Kona was a fan favorite in the game, being designed after an actual skate park in Jacksonville, Florida. It was considered to be one of the first skate parks in the United States, and for some reason, in the PlayStation 1 port, it took place at night. The soundtrack. I'm gonna keep this portion brief. Pro Skater 4 has upgraded to feature 37 different tracks from a variety of artists, both old and new, and I can't showcase all of them in this video. But there are legends like AC/DC, Iron Maiden, Sex Pistols, Less Than Jake, and Offspring making an appearance on the soundtrack, with previous artists like Goldfinger, System of a Down, and Public Enemy making a return. Hip-hop representation in the OST was notable, with Run DMC's My Adidas, Gangstar's Mass Appeal, A$AP Rock's Labor, and NWA's hit track Express Yourself being featured on the OST. That also doesn't mean the punk rock representation wasn't bad either, with Avail's Simple Song, Bouncing Souls, Manthem, Agent Oran's Bloodstains being some of my favorites. They even included the UK subgenre Oi, with the inclusion of Toy Doll's Dig That Groove Baby from their 1983 record. Several songs in the OST even featured works of actual pro skaters in the game, with Muska Beats, City Stars, and The Faction being music projects from actual skateboarders that are featured in this game. And all of this is only half of what Pro Skater 4 soundtrack has to offer: online community. I wanted to spend less time talking about the soundtrack and spending more time talking about the online community that was in Pro Skater 4. Online was only limited to the PlayStation 2 and then later the PC ports of the game. However, the online capacity of this game was increased to 8 players and now had 8 different game modes. And this was where the Pro Skater 4 online community started to thrive, where improv became a more popular style of gameplay for more experienced players. Improv is a style of gameplay in the Tony Hawk community that involves starting a line with no real plan and expectation on where that line could go, which leads to a more interesting and impactful score than the typical style of gameplay, with College being a popular choice among players. Notably, Gonzo's run on College demonstrates how crazy some of these combo videos could get. In 2003, Andy Tony Hawk Pro Skater recorded the first ever documented style line on the level Shipyard. Typically, players on Tony Hawk Pro Skater were doing something called robot lines for high scores, which he described on Reddit as lines that are optimized for maximum efficiency purely for scoring, often a short back and forth path or a loop that usually is repeatable, doing the same thing over and over again like a robot. It's basically just good parts of the level that people use frequently because it gives you good points. A style line is considered as a planned line from start to finish, showing off transfers, various types of creativity, and doing planned tricks during certain sections, but not intended for high scores at all. It's all to simply look cool. Other popular runs included no manual lines, which were combo lines that lacked manuals, relying on grinds and transfers for scoring, which is remarkably challenging. A good example is Magic Summer's no manual on Alcatraz. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 led to the launch of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4 Online on October 25th, 2002. The website would most dominantly be known for active discussion forums and a place where users can host competitions. And one of the biggest and most well-known competitions was Tourney for the Homies, a Neversoft sponsored competition with a $1,000 prize to Best Buy. Some footage of the online event still exists to this day, with Fake Shady taking first and Andy Tony Hawk Pro Skater taking second. Other TXO-hosted sites included Cap Review forums for uploading and rating creative parks for Pro Skater 4, and also Glitch Vault. Glitch Vault was a site where players could post glitches and exploits found in the game, which was pioneered by players Onion and Invisible Man. Reception. Despite Pro Skater 4 remaining as a solid and addictive title in the series, the market success of the game wasn't as good as Pro Skater 3. This was due to a very competitive game market in 2002, with games like Halo, Super Mario Sunshine, Vice City, Metroid Prime, Wind Waker, and Morrowind. The list goes on, honestly. However, this doesn't take away the fact that Pro Skater 4 still charted as the 9th best-selling of the year in the United States. GameSpot named Pro Skater 4 the best Xbox game and the second best PlayStation 2 game and GameCube game of 2002, giving the PlayStation 2 version a 9.5 out of 10. IGN gave the PlayStation 2 version a 9.3, honoring the increase in map size and even praising the increase in difficulty. During the 6th Annual Interactive Achievement Awards, Pro Skater 4 was nominated for Console Sports Game of the Year. Even the Game Boy version received raving reviews. GameSpot declared it to be the second best Game Boy game of November, behind Metroid Fusion. The GBA's isometric view and innovative design really made the game feel the closest it's ever had to the console release.
The award is mine, Tommy Vercetti! You understand? I should get credit for this! By the way, really love your work. Big fan. Oh, thanks.
Personal experience. Pro Skater 4 is such a fun game to pick up and play. I love the addition of the practice mode in the main menu. I think it's evident that the playstyle for 4 feels different from that of 2 and even 3. The levels in Pro Skater 4, much like 3, throw line after line at you. So instead of doing combos that focus on spins and grabs, I end up naturally doing grinds and manuals. Pro Skater 4 is the Tony Hawk game that I kinda suck at the most. I don't hate Pro Skater 4, but I definitely don't go out of my way to play it either. I can appreciate its innovations in the series, like the jump-in quality that it offers. It's obvious in both its design and gameplay. However, the combination of its difficulty and stiff controls can be frustrating. By the time I reach the zoo level, I'm already feeling the stress. The objectives demand precise execution, and I often find myself awkwardly trying to stop my skater in place just to complete certain tasks or end up getting to one, which just ends up getting a little frustrating. That being said though, Pro Skater 4 is undeniably addictive. It's one of those games that's easy to pick up and play. A lot of the fans consider it as the peak of the series, and it's clear that Pro Skater was shifting towards a more goofier direction, as a reflection of Neversoft's goofiness. That's not a bad thing though. If anything, it makes Pro Skater feel like a passion project, something that people can truly appreciate. Neversoft wasn't trying to create a hyper-realistic skateboarding sim, they just wanted to make a game that was just simply fun, and Pro Skater 4 is a very good example of this. But does it hold up in comparison to Tony Hawk's Underground? Development. So after the release of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4, Neversoft recognized the need to evolve the series beyond its traditional formula. While Pro Skater 4 had introduced a pseudo-open world approach with objectives like collecting letters and point A to B goals, these mechanics no longer felt sufficient for a next-generation audience. This was during a period where there was a rise of narrative-driven games like GTA Vice City, Kingdom Hearts, Halo, and Legend of Zelda Wind Waker that influenced the gaming ethos at the time. Pro Skater 4's Create-A-Skater mode had been immensely popular, inspiring the team to expand upon it by introducing a full-fledged story mode in which players could experience the journey of going pro themselves by creating their own skater. To achieve this, lead designer Chad Findlay and the team interviewed professional skaters to understand what it truly took to make it into the industry. By incorporating these real experiences and visiting iconic skateboarding hotspots, Neversoft aimed to create an authentic representation of a skater's rise to fame. I found a very interesting article by the US Gamer that explains the oral history of Thug. Chad Findlay, the lead designer at Neversoft, he stated this: "My goal was to make a great adventure game, Tony Hawk style. But after talking to these skaters, my visions changed. I wanted players to feel what it's like to go pro. The hardships, the betrayals, the victories, these guys are warriors, and I wanted people to experience that." The professional skaters played an even much larger role in Thug's development than in any other previous title, which says a lot. Each pro had to personally visit Neversoft's office to discuss their in-game appearances, down to their outfits, their tricks, and their animations.
Alright, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4, one of these asinine programmers over here at Neversoft messed up and had me skating Mongo Goofy Foot. What the hell is that? Apparently this is his car. I'm out here in the parking lot of Neversoft and I'm gonna get a little frontier justice.
Some, like Jamie Thomas, provided insight into skateboarding fundamentals, while Rodney Mullen would just straight up go outside into the parking lot and display his tricks out for the Neversoft staff to see. Scott Peace in that interview stated that was basically part of their contract. They had to come in, sit down with us, and tell us what they wanted to look like and what they wanted their outfit to be. It was bonus points if they just came dressed up, because then there would be no interpretation and we couldn't screw it up. Of course, this is a Bam Margera series, and Bam Margera was mentioned in this article, so I had to throw it in. UI artist Dana McKenzie, he stated, "I remember one day Bam just looking over Nolan's shoulder. He was working on Bam's character, and there's Bam sitting there eating a frickin', I don't know, creamsicle or something, and he's just staring. He was like, thank you, thank you, thank you, this is so cool, this is so cool." He was thanking us while we were all thanking him for coming to the office. Jim Jagger, an animator at Neversoft, added, "For Bam's special move, he just wanted to do crazy stunts and smash things. I just remember some of the reference footage of him doing flips inside the office, and I remember videoing him standing on the floor and doing the jump and spin and land on his back. And he's like, I want to do that on a skateboard. Can you do that on a board?" Dana McKenzie, the UI artist, actually told a story in this article where he was out taking reference photos in the valley and suddenly got detained by a police officer who was suspecting suspicious activity. However, it turned out that one of the officers was actually a fan of Pro Skater 4, so he got let go. Neversoft would also invite user Benson of TXO to attend E3 2003, where he would meet with Neversoft and discuss the game with the team. This would follow the release of a site called Thuggish Thoughts, which was a suggestion site that assists in giving the community a stronger voice to influence the development of the game, which is what made Neversoft connect with their audience strongly. The behind-the-scenes footage showing the devs at Neversoft made it clear they are just as passionate of skateboarding culture more than ever. There was a general understanding of a lot of the nuances and jargon that came with this culture thanks to the help of the professional skaters that took part in the development process, which, as I mentioned, was the sole reason the game was such a success in an unsuccessful market. I want to mention that for a promotional ad, it displayed the text, "You are a punk," with Liam Lynch's legendary track United States of Whatever, a classic parody comedy track that Liam himself said was recorded in a single take. Gameplay. With each installment in the series introducing highly innovative features, Neversoft continued to add new mechanics to enhance combo engagement. These additions include pressure flips, acid drops, and wall plants. Pressure tricks basically added more flips to the game. It replicated the idea of a pressure flip from real skateboarding, which is a flip trick that solely uses the popping foot without the support of the other foot flicking the board. Acid drops enabled players to drop straight into a half pipe from any height, offering greater control in the air. This was accompanied with hip transfers, which was similar but at an angle. Wall plants was a very nice addition. Wall plants prevented combos from ending when hitting walls, allowing players to kick off the wall and continue their combo. However, the most significant gameplay innovation came with that of the caveman, a mechanic that allowed players to dismount their board, climb buildings, walk on rooftops, and continue combos using a small clock icon. This feature alleviated the need to slow down or come to a complete stop. Thug also introduced the ability to drive various vehicles on certain levels, integrated within the game's missions. However, the driving mechanic was overly ambitious, suffering from tight and complicated controls as well as poor collision detection. Another major addition was the trick editor, allowing players to customize their gameplay style. This system provided control over the animation and trick duration of your trick, and offered an unprecedented amount of personalization. However, it also led to an exploit known as Cat Bag, create a trick, broken ass game. Speedrunners used this exploit by creating an extremely fast trick and assigning it to every trick slot available. When performing trick-based missions, players could now complete objectives significantly faster because the only thing that would appear is that single trick. Thug was not unfamiliar with its exploits. Other well-known glitches included the Dark Slide Reset, where when performing a Dark Slide grind, it could sometimes reset the grind balance meter, making grinds and combos a lot easier and longer. This wasn't just limited to the Dark Slide though, this also included other grinds such as the Salad Grind. Another infamous exploit was the Butt Slap, where players could get unrealistic air boosts by spamming the flip and grab button while simultaneously holding and releasing X. This technique could double or even quadruple a player's height. Air control is a technique that gives the player more movement potential when the player ditches their board following a grind in mid-air. Once mastered, the technique makes combos a lot more fun and flexible. A lot of the exploits found in Thug polarized Pro Skater fans. On one hand, it showed how incomplete the game was due to a limited amount of development time. Andy THPS mentioned in the Pro Skater podcast that he felt guilty over missing these exploits despite having the role of quality assurance. However, I think these exploits made Thug an even better experience. These made the gameplay more fun and could be useful for players interested in improv. It's not like these particular exploits took away anything from the game. If anything, it just made it more fun. The difficulty. The difficulty in Thug was adjusted to cater a wider audience in comparison to Pro Skater 4's notable strong difficulty. The 4 difficulty settings ranged from too easy to sick. Sick difficulty altered the routing of objectives, introduced harder time restraints, and significantly increased score requirements. Thug became notoriously challenging on sick difficulty, especially upon reaching Tampa. For example, the wall plant combo goal in Chapter 8 was particularly brutal, almost impossible to complete without maxed out stats or cheats. Other frustrating challenges included Chapter 15's Kill Wallows mission and Chapter 22's Hangover Cure. It goes without saying the last mission is a nightmare to complete without practicing, having to complete 40 different spots in one single go, which is honestly a common issue with the game. A lot of the hardest goals in the game have to do with doing these very long, extensive grinds that involve grabbing so many objectives that you're going to be hitting retry over and over again. I also want to add that getting stat points is also pretty difficult. Objectives are near impossible on sick difficulty for stat points, and it's necessary in order to progress because you need to increase your stats to complete certain goals, which just adds difficulty in its own way. Players looking to max manual will have to manual for up to 17 seconds, which is even trickier when you consider that you're doing this with lower stats. Anonymous Caller in Moscow is a good example of how intense the sick difficulty can get on certain missions. The usual objective requires 10 360 spin transfers over 4 minutes, but the sick difficulty requires 20 in 1 minute and 30 seconds, which is absurd because you can't go up on the opposite vert ramp to do it over and over again. You instead have to get off of your board and rapidly go up back and forth in a rapid succession and just barely make it in the nick of time. For those seeking the same level of frustration as Pro Skater 4, playing on sick difficulty delivered that experience. Even special tricks were locked behind very specific challenges requiring players to execute those tricks successfully. However, unlike Pro Skater 4, Thug allowed more flexibility, making difficulty more of a choice rather than a requirement, which is a welcome improvement. Character selection. Neversoft brought back a full lineup of pros, but also included Paul Rodriguez from Girl Skateboards and Ardo Sari, the Finnish skate legend from Flip Skateboards. While these pros might go unnoticed due to story mode focusing on a custom character, many of them were featured in the in-game goals and ultimately became playable during the demo tape mission set near the end of the game. I mean, they're also all playable in the free skate mode and the Creative Park mode, so there's still opportunities to play as these guys. All the playable pros still had their own special trick sets, board designs, and wardrobe featured in the game. Bonus skaters featured included Marvel licensed character Iron Man, Gene Simmons, and the creature Thud, inspired by the 1984 film Chud. Additionally, the game featured 50 pre-made creative skaters available by naming your character a specific name. Bam's character design would be shirtless at default this time around, and features his heartogram waist tat and his notorious rib tattoo. He is also spotted wearing a pair of purple audio sneakers. Bam's special tricks included Bam Ben Air, the Jackass making its return, the Stupid Grind, and, my favorite, the Grind and Barf. The level design. During the brainstorming process, Neversoft would compile a list of about 100 potential locations before eventually narrowing them down for the game. Following this, members at Neversoft would travel to these locations and find inspiration in designing the game. This included Hawaii and Russia, which were pretty expensive to travel to. Chad Finley, the lead designer, stated, "So a few weeks before we'd start on the level, we'd send out people on reference trips to all the locations, and we did this multiple times as we did the game, with the goals of just getting a lot of photo reference. Because the more photo references we had, the easier it would make the game. What could this be? Oh, it could be this. If we were having problems figuring out what could be skatable and how do you make a half pipe out of something, we just literally trolled through the photos to see if there was anything that would solve the problem that would make it be more authentic. The other goal was also to do research of skating, like when I went to Russia with Brian, Ted, and Aaron Skillman, who hooked up with a guy who was a skater there, and he took us on a bunch of skate spots throughout Moscow. Levels in Tony Hawk Underground felt more expansive compared to previous games, with each map featuring a secret tape, hidden area, pedestrians, a vehicle to drive, and different skaters. Most levels also incorporate roads, allowing for the presence of vehicles and car-based missions. Similar to Pro Skater 4, Neversoft focused on making the environments feel more active, adding more NPCs and interactable elements. Interestingly, levels were initially meant to be even larger than that was featured in the game, but Neversoft wanted to keep the game at a steady 60 FPS, making it a priority, especially when designing complex maps like New Jersey and Vancouver. Neversoft also introduced day and night transitions in the level design to give the game more dynamic lighting. One of the more unique bonus levels is Hotter Than Hell, a Kiss-themed concert stage. If players collect the Kiss letters, the band appears on stage to perform. However, due to time constraints, this feature wasn't as exciting as originally planned. Some of my favorite levels from this game include New Jersey. New Jersey's a gritty suburban landscape that captures the post-industrial aesthetic of the state, complete with a small helicopter that flies around that you don't really notice until you sit there and just stop and just look at it. Hawaii is one of the most beloved maps in the entire series. Its rooftop sections are pretty fun to play around with, and there's a lot of carefully placed skate lines that encourage some creative combos here. The level even features areas that are inspired by the search for Animal Chin. Alan Flores, the senior designer, had a very interesting story when in Hawaii, where they ended up meeting some guys from a shop called 50/50 that actually got them onto an Air Force base to check out some really cool wooden bowls that were built. Where he stated, "They also took us to the Wallows. If you were in Southern California or Florida, you might not even bat an eye at a spot like this. It's just a wash. They built it up with ramps and all this cool stuff. So you just go in between a couple houses, climb up, and suddenly you're in this hidden skate spot." I feel like this quote kind of gives a solid explanation as to why the levels in Tony Hawk Pro Skater had so many neat little skate areas. Vancouver's design revolved around a hotel situated at the epicenter of the map, surrounded by various pools, a hockey rink, and benches. Upon entering the hotel, the music shifts to a more elegant piano music, and the employees in the hotel appear very discontent with the skater. Moscow featured a colorful post-Cold War aesthetic that effectively incorporated Russian architecture into its design, reflecting the Kremlin's onion domes and red brick look with Byzantine influences. It also included charming additions like snow halfpipes and grindable tanks. After progressing far enough in the story, players could unlock 3 classic Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 levels: School 2, Hangar, and Venice Beach. These levels are located in Hawaii, New Jersey, and Moscow respectively. Additionally, several pre-made parks were included, such as Andy's Park of Doom and the well-known Montana, which is just a tree. Other design elements included the HUD customization, which allowed players to change the interface theme, which included a lot of really interesting designs. Like there was an Iron Man design. This feature was such a treat to discover upon playing. If you notice, it actually changes throughout the game depending on what chapter you're on. Create a Deck was also added, which gave players more creative freedom towards their own board design. The Create a Park also includes the most assets out of any other Tony Hawk game, giving you more options to create whatever you'd like. The online community. The PlayStation 2 version was the only console port to feature online multiplayer. The reason the Xbox version lacked this feature was explained in the June 2003 issue 122 of Game Informer, where Tony Hawk's Underground received its own article. Good old Joel Jewett elaborated by saying, "Microsoft maintains strict control over Xbox Live content. It insists on overseeing and approving every item downloaded to a memory card or uploaded to the servers. This includes face maps, created goals, skate parks, and more. If that were to happen, it would take an extremely long time for those things to become available. And in contrast, Sony takes a more hands-off approach with its online dealings." As previously mentioned, several websites on the internet were at the heart of the Tony Hawk community. Many of them were connected to ThugX Online, TXO's official website. The site provided everything Tony Hawk Pro Skater related, including goal guides, glitches, forums, and hyperlinks to other Tony Hawk Pro Skater fan-made websites. Here is the TXO crew in 2004. Notice there's quite a few of them, and each player on the team had their own bio, style of gameplay, and these include Benson, Andy Tony Hawk Pro Skater obviously, and Invisible Man, who played as an invisible avatar. More tournaments would be hosted by the clan, including Tourney for the Homies 2, the Impoverty Strike and Tourney aka I2, and the TICC. Andy THPS would create one of the last hosted sites, called Lineage, which hosted Tourney for the Homies 2, and featured some of the best captured videos out there. Andy even released a groundbreaking video called Project, a cinematic thug video featuring a montage of Andy's tricks where he utilized his samurai sun hat as he shreds the levels featuring songs from Tool. Andy impressively made this in Windows Movie Maker too, which I find really cool. The story. Unlike its predecessors, Thug marked a major shift for the series by introducing a fully story-driven campaign and cinematic cutscenes. Players could now customize their skater with a variety of gear, including real-world brands like McDonald's and Butterfinger, and that model would be featured in the cutscenes. The amount of customization in the Create-A-Skater is phenomenal. You get a variety of hairstyles, clothing, accessories, and tattoos, all of which can be changed in color and scale. Face mapping is also an available option. This was an interesting feature. Face mapping is a feature that allows the player to replace a skater's face texture with any other image, typically the player's face.
I think people are gonna really embrace this whole face mapping thing because it's new technology. You know, it's not something that's overly difficult to get into your game. All you got to do is take a digital picture of yourself and email it to a server, and then you download it through your console. And so
the protagonist, a customizable skater from suburban New Jersey, dreams of going pro alongside their childhood friend, Eric Sparrow. Each chapter can vary in the number of objectives that are needed to progress. However, the player is able to skip 1 or 2 of these goals per chapter and still be able to continue on in the game. Thug introduced a new level of freedom, allowing players to skate around and complete goals at their own pace. Players also earn stat points through mini challenges that are unlocked throughout the game. This is a spoiler alert, guys, alright? If you really want to skip this part, then you could go to this part in the video, but just letting you know it's not really a big deal. There's like, this is a pretty cool campaign, but like, yeah, but it's no Deus Ex.
What up, Eric?
The story kicks off with the protagonist walking up to Eric. Eric got his board dismantled by the dealers on Elm Street. He complains about his knee and asks for the player's help. The player's first goal is to collect the pieces on the roof so Eric can rebuild his board. Eric then encourages the protagonist to skate and teaches you how to caveman.
Okay, Mr. Hawk, try this one.
The player then skates against Eric after being taught how to revert to manual. The player then helps out his next door neighbor, Jason Turbo, of the neighborhood street racing gang, the Street Warriors, by giving his dog some exercise. Chad Muska arrives in town for a demo. Muska shows off his luxury SUV.
It's louder than a Metallica concert in there!
The player is then inspired to impress Chad Muska. While he drives around, the player has to go to different areas to score points within Muska's area of vision. Muska was impressed by the skater, gave him some words of encouragement, and threw him a new board and sped off. The player now attempts to earn a sponsorship with the legendary Stacy Peralta, who is the owner of the local skate shop. Things heat up when late into the night, the player discovers the gang on Elm Street took some gear from the shop. The skater named Sean is planning to sneak there to retrieve it.
It's my neighborhood. I'll do it.
Wait, kid, it's too dangerous!
But without hesitation, the player decides to sneak there himself. There's actually a well-known glitch in this mission where if you walk over to the parked car, you can retry the mission and the game will give you your board back so you can skate around if you'd like to. When the protagonist reaches the stolen goods, they discover Eric is already there, acting rather suspicious.
Me? Oh, yeah, I gotta finish doing something here.
Moments later, Eric sets one of the gang's cars on fire, laughing as the flames consume it. The next day, the player meets up with Stacy Peralta. He asks about being sponsored, and Peralta mentions that if he wants to be sponsored, he's gonna have to make a unique skate video using special spots that is something new and refreshing. Upon approaching Eric with the good news, Eric is shooken up.
They know.
He is being stalked by the dealers for his act of arson. He must retreat to a buddy's house in New York. Player then collects scrap for Headstone Harry to build a ramp, and then the Street Warriors let you sketch their car to jump over a conveniently placed police barricade blocking their path, giving the player access to the metro station. Security tries to stop them, but the player responds accordingly.
What's your problem, Bacon Bits?
And disorients the security guard. Before being able to leave, Eric finally gets kidnapped by the gang, and the player begins to chase the gang down, and thanks to the help of the Street Warriors, the protagonist was able to save Eric's life.
Let's get the hell out of here!
After escaping to Manhattan, the player and Eric set their sights on making a skate video to impress Stacy Peralta. After earning the respect of local skaters to help with the tape, Eric then discovers a car that just so happens to be on fire and tells the player to pull some sick tricks off of it. After being impressed by their burning car jump New York City tape, Peralta offers the duo his van for them to travel to Tampa to attend the Tampa Am competition, after doing a couple errands of course, which also included a chef with a giant cleaver who may work at McDonald's, teaches the skater how to boneless. That's an interesting one.
Boneless.
Things go sour when on the way to Tampa. A cop pulls them over for an offensive bumper sticker and broken taillight. Eric insults the cops and the cops arrest him and requests the player do some errands if he wants Eric back. Because we eventually find out what the officer's up to that's kind of ruining his plans. The player busts Eric out of jail, where Eric has an idea.
Those pigs work for Mayor Jed, and he's running for re-election. Let's make sure he doesn't win.
Sabotage Mayor Jeb's campaign by grinding his signs throughout the city. Mayor Jeb then sends the cops after the two, and Eric, with a borrowed police car he somehow got, requests the player to find a way to ditch it by driving it into the ocean. Now time for check-in at the Tampa Am, but Eric claims he forgot
I mean, I sent my form in, you know.
to enter the player into the competition while registering himself. Eric then ditches the player, and with no official spot, the player now has to impress the local pros. But this includes Bam Margera.
Bam Margera, what will he do next?
Welcome to Wet Beaver's party boat. This party's boring as hell.
So Bam invites him to the Wet Beaver's party boat to land tricks on command. Afterward, Tony Hawk approaches the player and asks to skate with them. Tony learns about the player's connection with Stacy Peralta and pulls a few strings to register the player into the competition. After winning a series of competitions, the player faces Eric in the finals, defeating that lying prick. Players are given the opportunity of choosing one of 5 sponsors to represent themselves in the game, with Bam greeting the player about joining Element.
Would everybody just shut up for 5 seconds and let me talk to the damn kid? I gotta give it to you, that run was bullshit. No, in a good way though.
Displaying how Bam was the poster child of the brand at the time. The tape for Element features Bam vert skating on a rooftop mini ramp in Philly, mentioning why he chooses living close to Philly over places like Hollywood. Following winning the Tampa Am, the player receives new board designs and meets their team manager in San Diego.
Yeah, are you Todd, the team manager?
Hey, look, I gotta finish this meal before I go out to eat, so here's my skateboarding 101 spiel.
A self-absorbed gluttonous guy who gives limited advice and immediately assigns him to piggyback an ad shoot. After completing the ad shoot, the manager, who comically calls the protagonist the Idaho Kid, tells him to gather all the stuff for a party to celebrate. The player parties too hard, sleeps in, only to be interrupted by Todd, who introduced him to the new crewmate, Eric Sparrow.
Sup, fool?
The player has to gather his drunken teammates to get ready for the upcoming demo. The demo in San Diego was a bit tough since it's grind heavy and requires a lot of time management to complete, but this leads to free tickets to Hawaii.
Hawaii!
While on the plane, the player connects with another teammate who just got his own board design.
Who knows? Do the same, maybe they'll turn you pro in a few years.
And gains a little bit of advice. In Hawaii, the player is given the opportunity to gather footage for the upcoming Slammed City Jam event in 3 days. A little later, Eric bumps into the player, who comes to gloat about his footage. The player mentions he has a sweet spot he's learning about, and Eric, interested in his own self-gain, offers to help if need be. The player eventually finds the secret spot on top of the hotel, and he summons Eric with the camera to come see the spot for the footage. Eric mentions the danger of it.
You serious? You miss your ollie, we'll be sending you back to Jersey in a coffee can.
And reluctantly tells the player to do a few tricks and that's it. Let's not go too far here, guy. The player, however, had a much bigger idea. Do a 900 spin while transferring from the top of the hotel.
Crap, it's the cops. We gotta split.
However, the player doesn't want to miss the opportunity for a good stunt.
You freaking lunatic. You're gonna get yourself killed.
And I'm gonna pull a McTwist on the way over.
And mentions ramping over the helicopter while doing a McTwist. Upon completion, Eric is shocked. He runs down and the two flee from the cops. Somehow, I don't know how you're able to flee from the cops in this game, but they do it twice. The team then heads to Vancouver for the premiere of the tape. After completing 7 of the 9 goals in this chapter, the player's final task is to gather stolen goods and VIP sponsors for the screening. But after arriving at the premiere late, the player learns that he was not only not featured, but Eric straight up took the credit for the helicopter stunt and earned the spot as a pro. The ultimate betrayal.
Betrayed.
Fueled by revenge, the player enters the Slam City Jam as a pro, leading to one of the most badass lines in the entire game.
You're a pro? They entered you as an amateur.
Someone made a mistake.
The player eventually confronts Eric and dominates the competition, finally earning their spot as a pro, which means getting their own pro model board.
Hey, way to clean up in the Slam City Jam. Heard you scored a pro model too.
Well, I would have scored it sooner if Eric hadn't lost my video footage.
Right.
But of course, Eric weasels his way into securing a trip to Moscow first, so the player has to land a shoe sponsorship to afford the trip. The player scores the sponsorship, but must rush to the bus before it leaves. The player finally arrives in Moscow and begins to skate with the locals before the demo in a few days.
Word to your brother, my man.
After talking to a Russian skater who's trying too hard to be cool, Todd requests the player to build up speed and spine transfer over the wall to open the gate so the team can enter, mentioning Operation D's.
Operation D's what?
D's nuts! nuts! Now,
Yeah, guys, so it turns out that the D's Nuts meme existed even before the 2015 viral video by Welvin the Great. It goes as far back as Dr. Dre's studio album, The Chronic. D's Nuts. Bam helps the player with opening the gate as the next scene plays. Eric half-heartedly apologizes to the player, who reluctantly accepts it while Bam honors the presence of tanks.
Oh, tank, look at these tanks. It's so good. We can't go skating right now. Look at these tanks. Damn.
Eric and the player cooperate to impress a bunch of local skaters. However, that night, things spiraled out of control. Eric, in a full-on drunken stupor, takes keys from a Russian guard and hijacks a tank. He starts it up and begins surfing on it like an absolute idiot. The protagonist scrambles to get control of the situation, trying to shut down the tank before it causes any real damage. But surprise, he fails. The tank crashes, costing 6 figures in damage, and the protagonist gets stuck inside, leading to his arrest.
When I saw him steal the guard's keys, I knew he was up to something stupid. I tried to stop him, but he wouldn't listen.
And true to that snot-nosed, ego-driven self, Eric denied everything. As a matter of fact, he tried to stop the protagonist. And the protagonist just takes the fall, losing their hard-earned sponsorship and watching their career crash and burn over the negligence of your so-called friend, Eric Sparrow. The player finds a contact named Alexander that could help the protagonist escape the country. After meeting with his contacts and doing some errands, one of the contacts, Kalo, offers help. He gives the player a bag and tells him to walk around the guards and meet up with Alexander to get out of Moscow, which is done successfully.
You are going home, but you are welcome back here anytime.
Back in Jersey, the player gets confronted by Eric.
No, homie. I got it all. My own company, 6 cars in my garage, a record deal in the works, and what do you got, huh? Food stamps?
Who, being his ego-driven, money-grubbing self, talks massive shit. At rock bottom, the protagonist has a heart-to-heart with Stacy Peralta.
Skating is whatever you make it. It didn't change. You're the one that changed. Now go skate.
It was never about the fame or the money. It was about the passion, the love for the sport, the art of skating itself. Inspired, the protagonist makes a decision. Screw the industry. They'll form their own skate team and make a raw, authentic skate video, earning the respect of the local pros, including Mike Valley.
You know, a lot of the pros I've been talking to think that sounds pretty cool.
Giving the player the ability to select his team and name his team accordingly. There's also an Animal Chin reference. The player's new team then does a series of challenges, one for each map to feature in the video. The final video features actual skate footage from the team. Bam's feature features his usual favorite spots, but also there's some fresh street skate spots too that I feel like I haven't seen. The video ends up being a massive success. Then comes the final confrontation in the last mission in the game. Eric slithers back into the picture, offering to buy out the protagonist's video.
I told you, it was never about the money.
Right, I forgot. Mr. Pure, I should have fixed you back in Tampa.
Tell it to your posse.
Just another chance to leech off someone else's hard work, but the player refuses, staying true to the real meaning of skateboarding. Then, when Eric, in one last scumbag move, taunts him with the stolen Hawaiian footage. That's the last straw. This leads to the game's final mission, a full-sped chase to hunt Eric down and take back what's rightfully yours.
I'm still better than you! You got lucky, you little punk!
And if you beat the game on both difficulties, you get the ultimate reward. Instead of doing the last mission, the protagonist simply punches Eric in the fucking face, delivering the justice every player has been waiting for. Thug's storyline is one of the most compelling in the Tony Hawk series, a true rags to riches tale. Eric is a well-crafted villain, manipulative, selfish, and just a complete sellout.
Couldn't bring myself to tell you, see, there was this thing at Customs.
Lying secret.
Everything skaters hate, making every moment of betrayal hit harder and harder than the last. The player's journey from a small-town skater to a world-renowned pro, only to have it all ripped away, adds real emotional weight. It's a story about resilience, about sticking to your roots, and about not letting some corporate climbing asshole take advantage of you. Soundtrack. Tony Hawk's Underground features the biggest soundtrack in the entire series. 78 different tracks with one exclusive track that was featured in Bam's skate video. This game is packed with bangers across hip-hop, punk rock, alternative, and now metal music. I won't even have time to cover them all, but let's just say, my entire high school music taste was shaped by this soundtrack. Rise Against, Deltron 3030, NoFX, Alkaline Trio, Bad Religion. Man, I just can't. The punk rock, the hip-hop, the alternative sections in this game are just next level. The hip-hop lineup in Thug doesn't just hold up, it competes with the Def Jam series. Some of my personal favorites: Bus Driver's Imaginary Places, Jurassic 5's A Day at the Races, Mr. Lift's Phantom, Quasimodo's Low Class Conspiracy, which, great album by the way guys, and let's not forget the Herbalizer It Ain't Nothing, which features the legendary MF Doom. But it doesn't stop there. Thug brought more metal into the mix with bands like Entombed, In Flames, and Mastodon. Plus, it delivered solid alternative rock, including Jane's Addiction, who were rising in popularity at the time. Also want to mention that Queens of the Stone Age's Millionaire was a great inclusion, especially since it was featured in the introduction of CKY4, as we've covered before in this series. We even got Mike V and the Street Rats, which is Mike V's personal punk band. While on the topic of punk rock, the supergroup The Transplants is also featured on this, which features Tim Armstrong of Rancid and Operation Ivy fame. The punk selection in Thug is so impressive. Thug's selection in general is easily one of the best in the series. Now, is Thug my personal favorite OST in the series? Not quite. I'll explain why in the future. Thug easily earns the title as best soundtrack in the franchise. It even got official recognition, winning Best Video Game Soundtrack at the MTV Music Awards in 2004.
We want to thank, of course, Activision, all the geniuses at Neversoft, Joel Jewett, Scott Pease, Tim Riley, all the music people, Will Kasoy rhyming. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Where Tony Hawk himself accepted the award alongside Bam Margera, who of course used the moment to hype up Thug 2.
And make sure you get Thug 2 October 6th, where you can see my fat, naked dad do kickflip backside lip slide.
Reputation. While on the topic of awards, I stumbled upon this. Thug was also awarded the Alt Sports Game of the Year award at the 2004 G4A Awards. But instead of just handing out a trophy, they wheeled out Tony Hawk and set up a Tony Hawk roast. And man, it was pretty bad.
Hey, and how about Tony's video game, huh? That thing sold 500,000 units in the first week. The only thing to sell out faster than that is Tony Hawk.
It was pretty bad, but it got better, And still, Tony seemed to be having a good time about it, so that's what matters.
Day, are you ready for something sexy?
Yes, absolutely.
Something a little lacy?
Yes, please.
How about a little Preston Lacey? Hit it!
Things got chaotic as Preston Lacey would run out and jump onto Tony, followed by Wee Man and Chad Muska storming onto the stage. They started roasting Tony.
Hey, this guy is so old. You should be sponsored by Depends.
And, of course, plugged Thug 2, where they revealed one of the game's new characters, Paulie, who we'll talk about in the next chapter, who took a turn at roasting Tony.
When they call you the Birdman, what kind of bird are they talking about? This one?
Tony thanks the audience, and we even get that sneak peek of Thug 2. Outside of awards, Thug was a massive success, with the PS2 version ranking as the 8th best-selling console title of the year. In just 2 months, it sold nearly 2 million copies in the US. Despite Thug's success, Thug divided some old-school fans of the Tony Hawk series, particularly due to the cavemaning mechanic, preferring Pro Skater 2's simple yet fast-paced style of gameplay. However, players new to the series would admire Thug's ambitious story mode and arcadey feel. It surprises me how divided Tony Hawk fans were with Thug. From my perspective, the game is a must-play. Personal experience. Thug is a borderline masterpiece. The shift in gameplay and the addition of a solid story filled the gaps that the Pro Skater series was missing. The anti-authority humor and quirky characters made for some entertaining cinematics, keeping the vibe fun and rebellious. Personally, I love the caveman mechanic. It really helps me readjust my lines and keep combos going. But I won't pretend Thug's gameplay is flawless. With all the new mechanics packed in, the game became buggy as hell at times, and sick difficulty me absolutely insane. Some of these objectives are just brutally unbalanced. Stuff like grind here and collect 40 items in 2 minutes or land 3 consecutive combos without bailing are some of the notorious things that are in this that I don't like. Even with cheats, some of these challenges are just straight up painful. Another thing, I really wish my copy of Thug didn't have a save issue. The game would freeze while loading or saving, corrupting my data. So I had to rush through the game without turning off my PS2, which means that's why I ended up using cheats for a lot of this. And yet, even with cheats, I still struggled, guys. Some of these chapters are pretty ridiculous. I also want to mention that I had a really funny glitch where some of the models will T-pose in the goal selection screen. That's pretty interesting. Regardless, Thug is packed with so much content that even after talking about this for 47 minutes, there's still stuff I missed. The main story took me about 12 hours to beat, but between that, we had a lot of extra levels, unlockable tricks, and at the time, there was online play, so there was so much to do that you'll be hooked. For me, Thug is 5 out of 5, no question. And it's gonna be really, really interesting to compare this to Tony Hawk's Underground 2.
Oh yeah, don't get shot.